All right, thank you all for joining us today for Artist Panel as part of the Manifest Minifest Short Play Festival. This panel is our solo show from Page to Stage panel with Taji and Oktavea. My name is Simone Alexander. I'm the producing artistic director of New Manifest Theater. I use she, her pronouns, and I am calling in from the Tonkawa tribe lands, also known as Austin, Texas. And if Taji would like to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Taji Senior. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently in New York. Yeah, and I think that's it for me. I think I'm on the land of the Lenape.
Awesome. And Oktavea?
Hi, I'm Oktavea, LaToi. I use she, her pronouns as well. Currently, I am in Austin, Texas, Tonkawa land, by way of San Antonio, Texas. And yeah, I'm an actor and a writer, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your time today. I really asked y'all to be part of this process because I've seen your solo work shows and I've always been inspired by your work as artists and writers. I would love if we could just start with talking about your process, what shows you have created, and how they've evolved over time.
Octavia, you want to take it first?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can just because I guess mine is definitely, I have like a shorter list than Taji. But How to Heal When the World is Killing You Harshly, working title, is actually my first piece. And it started out as journal entries and poems. But yeah, and it has kind of developed into something that I like could not have imagined it developing into, and I'm really blessed and grateful. But yeah, so that's the extent of my writing work.
Yeah, I also realized that I didn't say that I was a writer performer in my introduction, so I guess I should also say that. Yeah, so the first thing I ever did was a 3-4 monologue thing with Salvage Vanguard called Amendment. That became What the Black Girl Found While Searching for God. That became Devour. That became Amendment, The Making of an American Myth, or The Slow Sipping of a Peacock Tea. And that's my solo work to date.
Awesome. And I believe both of those were available for streaming at one point, like over the pandemic time as well. So I do want to forward, if we do have links to those to share with our viewers, I would love to share them so that you guys can know what this great work looks like as well. But I would love to talk to you guys about why a solo show. What made you first think like, okay, I have something to say, I'm going to write it together, and this is the medium that I'm going to choose to perform it as?
Yeah, so I'll say that like it was not up to me, or not that it wasn't up to me. I said yes, unintentionally or unwillingly at first. So I feel like folks in Austin, if you've been in Austin long enough, you have had the pleasure of working with or have the knowledge of working with Adrian Dawes. And we had done Doper Than Dope 5 years ago now. And when we were getting ready to do our second run of it, she was getting ready to leave town and had been like, yeah, so when you get ready to do your solo work, And I was just like, with no intention of doing it. And then she left town and Salvage Vanguard called and said, Adrian said, you're doing a solo show and we have support available for you if you want to workshop it with us. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm doing a solo show. And so that's legitimately how it started. And then from there, all of these other opportunities just kept showing up. So just really for me became about answering the call for whatever opportunities arose around solo work. And specifically with Amendment, The Making of an American Myth, or The Slow Sipping of a Peacock Tea, which is different from Amendment, the works progress work that I did with SVT, that came about last summer because I was like, I reached out to SVT, which is now being run by Kate Taylor, who's now their artistic director. And I reached out to Kate after the protest to be like, hey, so I'm not marching, I'm not out in the streets, but I have these 3 terrible monologues. I'd be willing to dust them off. Could we do a live stream of them and ask folks to donate, and then whatever we raise in donation, could we give that to organizations in the movement? And Kate was like, absolutely. And also, would you be interested in doing a site specific thing? And I was like, sure. And that just from there catapulted into a whole other thing. Yeah. And so that's thus far. I mean, the more that I learn about theater, the more that, or I've been learning about theater, I've come to appreciate solo performances. I hesitate to say genre, but like as a very specific kind of theater making that requires a specific kind of artistry and craft. And I think Anna Davier Smith and Roger Governor Smith are some of the, and John Leguizamo's earlier work are some of the greatest examples of that.
Awesome. And then for me, mine started in the midst of the pandemic, early pandemic. I had just quit my job and I was planning on finishing the show that I was in, Good Friday with Simone, and then moving back to San Antonio. And me and my really good friend, Paris, we decided to have like painting sessions. And so we would just paint, and we painted a couple times, when, people were allowed to have like 10 people in a group. So we would eat and we would paint. And it was super cathartic. And then also at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was super scared. I mean, still, understandably, of course. But I was calling, people, and I remember calling an ex of mine and being like, hey, we're not on the best of terms. And I know, that like we're both blocked right now, but if anything were to happen to you, I don't know what I would do, and they never responded. And so I went to writing like these poems as a form of like closure and pouring out my heart to someone who will listen. And then it started out, I wanted to do like a gallery showing of the paintings that I had done during the pandemic, and have like these tiny little poems that kind of like correlated with the paintings, and something about that, like didn't form in the way that I wanted it to. And then the Vortex asked for people who were doing or who wanted to do like 1 to 2 people shows, and I was like, oh wait, this is kind of I think this is it. And I was getting confirmations, and then my friend, I think everyone knows Delonte Keys. Yeah, we all know Delonte. They sent me a newspaper clipping about someone doing a solo show, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the universe talking to me right now. Like okay. And then I originally wanted to do a 2-person show with one of my really good friends. But I did some more inner reflecting, and I was like, I think the only reason why I wanted to do 2 people was so I could hide behind my friend, and so it wouldn't be as much pressure on me. And I said, no, Oktavea, like you have to, I mean, like if you're gonna do it, you have to stand up and really do it. And then I emailed Simone, I emailed Delonte, and I was like, I have this idea, and y'all are like the first people, like I don't know if it's gonna work, but I would really love. And then it's just kismet. So yeah, that's how we got here, through voicemails and Facebook Messenger. Shout out if you know that person.
Awesome. I do want to take some time to talk about also the context of your work, obviously being 2 Black women and having that inspiration behind what you're writing. How do you feel how that has like maybe built community, or like Oktavea was saying, built closure in some way to talk about these issues that we're all facing, all dealing with. But, you know, I think from the perspective of Black women, we do feel like we're taking on a lot of other people's feelings, a lot of our current everyday situations as well, kind of disseminating that, and also being able to be fully functioning humans as well as passionate artists along the way. So I love if you guys could talk to the subject matter behind your pieces as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really excellent question, and especially in terms of like closure and building community and all of those different things. When I first, I think anytime I am writing something, which even feels weird to say, or sit down to write to something, it begins with a kind of inquiry. It is something that I'm like curious about, or whether I know it or not at the time, am trying to process and maybe don't have the language or the sounding board or something that, or it's a plea. It's a plea for somebody to see, understand, reflect back to me some aspect about myself that I don't quite understand. And that's especially true of Devour, which I wrote that in the middle of, from the middle of like an aching wound, you know what I mean? And I was making these romantic choices, or like cycling through these romantic patterns over and over and over again, and I couldn't figure out why, and I couldn't figure out, like, I couldn't wrestle my self-worth away from those situations. I couldn't divorce myself or divorce my need for external validation away from those situations. So I felt powerless and like I didn't have a lot of agency. And I was trying to draw a very clear line between like myself and like these externalized systems that I had then internalized. Like, it's not my fault that Black girls get called fast, right? But that's a system that I'm inculcated in. Like, it's not my fault that like people adultify girls and infantilize Black women, like, but that's the thing that like I've internalized, and like it lent itself to some really painful choices and decisions, and I was trying to make it have an understanding of that. And I don't know if like I successfully did that, but I did need to like say those things out loud to someone in a way that like I could not be gaslit into thinking that like if I'm on stage you can't talk back to me. So I could just say whatever I need to say and then we can move on. And then with Amendment, the longer version of it, the very first time I sat down to write Amendment, I was 27. When I did Amendment, The Making of an American Myth, or The Soul Sipping of a Peacock Tea, I was 31. So the biggest thing being like I was thinking more about motherhood and thinking more about maternity when I wrote the later piece than the earlier piece. And I just had a deeper understanding, or a broader understanding, of like what it meant to be an enslaved woman, and what the function of enslaved women was, and what the function of like labor was, outside of just like birthing. And so those are the sorts of things that, like, as far as from my vantage point, or how I occupy Blackness and womanness, that particular intersection, that's how those two things kind of inform my work. And I feel like I've performed all of these pieces for relatively small audiences, and then like with Amendment, which was the most recent one that we did over the pandemic, I wasn't able to be in that much conversation or community with folks, because normally you talk to folks after shows and those sorts of things, and that was a little bit non-existent with that piece. But I hope that like those pieces, whomever they reached, inspired some sort of like conversation or question, or opportunities for reflection. I will say that I have the immense privilege of always being able to have Black women as sounding boards. So like being able to go to Black women and being like, is this right? Like, you get what I'm saying? You get how I make sense? And so like just having them as sounding boards and people to check me and those sorts of things is like how I've been able to build community through my work.
Yeah, and then just bringing off that, I think for me, um, I think because mine came from journal reflections and everything, I'm a pretty private person, and then I mean, like if for friends, I'm like, oh girl, like this happened, but in general, I'm um, pretty private, and I also feel a lot of pressure. I mean, and it could be because I'm like, of course, a Black woman, right? But to perform happiness, and to be happy all of the time. And I think a lot of people know me as being, and like like super happy and go lucky and outgoing. Um, and it's really hard to be able to show other emotions that I feel like really are the ones that take over most of the time. And so then in terms of building community, I think writing this, and then again, of course, like having Black women as sounding boards have really helped me as well. I think that I was super surprised when I started performing the piece. I think with the workshop, and even with the reading, I was like, oh, like this resonates with you, like it does with me. And I mean, and it shouldn't be surprising, but I was just, I was just baffled at how much people cared for it in the same way that I did. That we are all truly going through lived and shared experiences. Um, and then of course, part of my sounding board was Taji, and Simone, and so yeah, I know I'm really grateful for the community that we have built. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I would love for you guys to talk about maybe some inspirations for you too. I know Taji, you mentioned Anna Davier Smith and John Leguizamo and their work in solo shows, but solo shows or, artists in general who you've grown to admire because of the subject matter that they address in their work?
Yeah, so in more recent years, Carol Walker has figured very prominently in my work. And I think anybody who saw Amendment saw Simone Emmett's brilliant sort of, I guess, metabolizing of Carol Walker's work and like trying to like center it in our world. But like, so Carol Walker, the visual artist, her work is incredible to me. Sadia Hartman's line of inquiry about retrieving stories from the archive and critical fabulation, and which is essentially, which I'm not even sure of the exact practice of it, but my understanding of critical fabulation is like creating stories around like true events in the ledger in the archive, and like supposing the details of this life and trying to imagine a fuller life of the folks for whom we only have names and calculations and receipts for. So Sadia Hartman and her attempts and all of her questions around that are super informative for me. And then there's also like just whatever I'm listening to. I think musicians especially, I always like, I make a playlist for everything. I make a playlist for the shower. I make a playlist for everything. If I have to walk to the bodega across the street, I have a playlist for it. But when I'm like sitting with work or trying to understand work, whatever musicians I'm sitting with at the moment, I always kind of like to think of them as like the artists that are sitting with me, kind of like my invisible round table of folks who are like sort of giving me things to think about and consider. Nina Simone is, I feel like that's cliche but honest. Alice Coltrane is really big for me. Sun Ra, especially in the first iteration of Devour. Sun Ra is When There Is No Sun with John Gilmore. Whew, was a really big deal for me during that time. Nick Hakim is always a really big deal for me. Yeah, so a lot of those folks, Pharaoh Sanders, other points of inspiration, June Jordan, the poet, Lucille Clifton, the poet, Tony K. Bombara, specifically the Salt Eaters. in that idea of wanting to be well and wanting to heal, and also like just a very Black ass community was super inspirational to me. So it varies from time to time, but the folks that I just named are sort of like foundational. Always kind of start with those folks, and then whatever comes.
Awesome. That's a wonderful list.
That is a wonderful list. And I would like it transcribed and sent to me.
We'll work on that.
Wow. And that's also a very good question and a very hard question as well. I think when sitting down to write this, I mean, we have a playlist too, you know, and I think Chica is probably like the how to heal, like goat. But I don't know, that's a very hard question. And I am not sure if I have so much of a list in terms of like, I don't know. I think for me, for this word in this time, I think that I have to consult with the ancestors, of course. I think that they were around all the time. And I was always at the altar, always in tears, always crying. And so I think being a channel and a conduit, what was important in terms of the work. But then also, I think a lot of the people that inspired me are just like showed me that you know that like it is like I could do this, that it is like possible, you know, like is my own community, you know, Jesus, Taji, you know, and it's so interesting because watching everyone show, you know, like as a friend and as a fan of y'all's work, I never thought about writing, you know, like I just wanted to come support and be there. And I think when it was my turn and when like the universe handed me the baton, I was often you know, like stifled and like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. You gotta get and and so I think a lot of my inspiration and just in terms of like, girl, you can do this, like do it, is my own community here. And I mean, and now I mean, it's not necessarily like grounded here, you know, because everyone is moving and shit. But my own community, that's what I would say.
I also love that answer because I feel like as someone who's part of the creative team for your project, you do see that interwoven in how the project is presented with the interviews that you're doing with your own family members and your friends. And that plays a very strong role in the story that you're telling.
Simone, absolutely, absolutely. Community is everything.
Totally. Yeah, I would love to talk about what you guys have planned next, even if it's, you know, you personally as an artist, if you have a next iteration of a solo show up your sleeve, things that our audience can look forward to from you guys.
So I graduated from my grad program in March, which like, what does even graduating in the middle of a pandemic even mean? In a few months before I graduated, I was like, I am gonna just take a year to figure out how to be a person. Because like I sort of handed myself over to this process into conservatory, and that is a very privileged thing to be able to do. And I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to do it. So now it's like, how do I rejoin the world as an actual person and not just like, I don't know, theater speak or jargon all the time. You know what I mean? Like that's just how do I develop a curiosity? How do I develop an appetite for work? How do I show up present and fully and curious to other folks' works without my just sort of like coded like thing to like that I'm looking to shut things down with? So that's a part of where I'm at, and I am back at the table or back at the word processor for for Devour, which I think the story is no longer served as a solo work, and so I'm reimagining what that looks like with an ensemble, and what stories are possible now that there's going to be more than one body on the stage, and I don't even know if my body is going to be the body on one of the bodies on the stage. So that's the most that like I am that I can say that I'm working on, other than just like working on returning to myself so I can show up fully to community. That's the that's what people can expect. And I don't know if they should expect much, but that's what I'm working on.
I love that because people definitely need that reminder. I feel all of the time, especially as things are opening back up and we're, in this new normal of living with and through a pandemic. Lots of people just want to get back to where we were before. And I think that, paying attention to yourself and where you are and really creating that space for healing is so necessary.
Absolutely. Yes. For me, well, I'm in a show called Rapunzel. Jeremy Rashad Brown wrote it. Ow, ow, ow. We open October 9th to October 31st. And then after that, it's so funny that we're all talking about breaks, because I told myself I'm taking a 6-month break. I'm going off of social media. I'm going, I won't be dating. That's the plan, we'll see. And I have it all written out, this plan, to return back to myself because I feel burnt out. And especially because I feel like I've been so distracted. I really want to sit down and do the work, and focus on this project that I'm working on, how to heal. And so then after that, we will be doing the fully produced show at the Vortex. Simone Alexander is directing, and it's gonna be great. I think it's April 23rd to May 7th. And then
Come on, Taurus season.
Huh?
I said, come on, Taurus season.
Come on, Taji. I know you had to step on and say that Taurus season. Okay. Yeah. And so that's gonna be awesome. And then eventually I want to go to grad school and I want to get this work toured and published. So we'll see. Also, but yes, heavy on the break, and we are in Mercury retrograde. So to my exes, don't call me, leave me alone, please, Lord, because I will write a poem about you and it will be performed.
I will say those are some of the best pieces in the show. So
thank you, girl. Come on, heartbreak. And just love. We need it. We as Black women don't get enough of it. We give it to ourselves and each other, but I need to be more receptive towards love.
I feel that 100%.
Yeah. Also, I'm really excited for Devour. Like I don't know, like even in our last conversation, like Devour just really, I don't know, like I don't know why it's really resonating with me.
Well, I'm grateful for that. It's a mess on the page right now. Like I have an act 1, and like every if I think too hard about it, I'm like, you're a failure. You have no idea what you're talking about. Like if I think too hard, I'm at that point in the process where I'm just like, this makes sense to no one. This is gobbledygook. And that's okay. That's just a part of
part of the process.
It's a part of the process. It's a part of getting things out on the page. It's just being like, none of it's the math ain't mathing. It's not quite curling over. And so,
you're being processed. I
that's
literally
it.
have a note on my phone saying, what does it say? I think for this next piece, it's gonna say, it's nice to see you again. But it's I'm just such a sap, and I'm just like, who wants to listen to this shit? But I'm gonna write
Everybody
it.
wants to listen to it. People like sappiness, whether they're willing to admit it or not.
Hey, that's true. That's true. I think we all want to be loved. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for this time. I would love to end with, some advice or, a first action item that our viewers can take away from this panel and, start work on their own solo show or whatever work that they're ambitious about.
Yeah, I have a few like philosophical and a few like practical. So like the first is like, just know that no one knows what they're doing. Ever. Even at the like whatever the quote unquote highest level is, the highest like level of a check, it all has to start with an idea and confidence in that idea or curiosity around that idea. And I would just say whatever you're curious about and whatever you're attracted to, allow yourself to be curious about and attracted to. That to me is what makes some of the most compelling work. And just by virtue of you being here, your curiosities and attractions are merited. You wouldn't exist if they weren't. You're not here for like other people to only be, consumed by other people. You're here for your own consumption as well. So that's one. The other thing I would say is like, you just got to start somewhere. So if you really want to do solo work, I would say just show up to the page every day and like even if it's for 10 minutes, just at the very beginning, just set out that time for your work. Show up for your work like you would show up for a job, and you'll yield some sort of return no matter what it is. The other thing is like watch other work. Because those things help inform your curiosities and be able to like articulate for yourself specifically why you enjoyed something or specifically why you didn't like something. And then there are some things that are going to move you and you won't know why, and like hold on to those things too. Like I said, Anna Davier Smith is like I think one of her recent works is on HBO right now. It was at one time streaming. Roger Governor Smith's Rodney was on Netflix, and his Huey P. Newton show, which is one of his earlier works, was on YouTube for a long time. John Leguizamo's Freaks, I think, is on Hulu or something like that, or maybe HBO. Watch John Leguizamo like pre-2005. Anything after that gets a little dicey, but his early work for certain. And yeah, just we want to hear from you. So just go for it.
Yes. I think for advice, gosh, yeah, I would piggyback off of showing up to the page, and whether that be like gratitude journals, or whether that be, like daily reflections on like your day in general. I think that really helped me. Also, I feel like you have to be willing to be vulnerable. I think that's hard for some people, but I think to be able to sit and to really put your heart on the page is very hard, and it may be one of the hardest things about writing or just being an artist in general. I feel like you really have to confront your shadow and confront the negative sides of you, the toxic sides of you, and whether and maybe it's not even about yourself, right? Or maybe it's about the world that we live in. I think honesty and being able to just sit down and write practically, I think are two things that I would say. And also, I would also say like follow your bliss. During the pandemic, I learned how to fucking paint, and I think that helped. And so yeah, I would say go out of your comfort zone, pick something that you like to do, and show up to the page and be honest. Be honest. Be honest. I think that's my advice. If that makes any sense at all, I don't know. We'll see.
Be honest is advice and a dare.
And a dare. It's advice and a dare. And it's a dare with like the 2 eyes emoji, like the you really gonna say that, sis? Okay. Proud of you.
Wow. I love that. I hope that everyone watching feels so inspired by y'all. I hope you guys go and look up all of these other artists we've also referenced during this time. Stay inspired, keep searching out, keep watching other people's work as well. And also just reiterating, go to the page, be honest. I love that. Yes. Great way to end, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for always carving out such meaningful, thoughtful spaces for us to reflect and be in community with one another. I think the work you do is so important. So thank you, Simone.
Thanks.
Ooh, I thought I got like some chill. I don't know if you can see, but yes.
So sweet, y'all. So sweet. Well, I hope that everybody else tunes into the rest of Manifest Minifest Short Play Festival, our other panels that we have going on, our other great short plays that are being showcased. And we will see y'all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.